Let's build some Star Wars, everybody! Yay! AT-ST from Bandai, recently released kit 1/48 scale. And before people put the messages down below, no, I'm not going to tell you where to find this because you cannot find it in the USA, at least from regular retailers. This is all the Bandai kits for Star Wars are Japanese exclusives, so you have to find resellers either on eBay. There are some in online stores selling them, but otherwise direct from Japan, so your local Hobby Lobby not going to have these. There. Now I won't get any questions. Haha. So this is the brand new tooling of the AT-ST from, what was it in? Yeah, it was Empire and mainly from Return of the Jedi. And I haven't unwrapped anything yet. We get, I like the 1 damage, battle damage decal. That's amusing. You do get a Chewbacca figure as a rider, so you can put him on top. That's nice. The red bits, all the Bandai Star Wars kits come with little laser firing things that you can stick on. Yeah, I'm not going to be adding that, but a rather large number of parts. The only other kit of this particular model was the old, I always get them confused, Erdl or AMT, one of those, but from 30 plus years ago when it was a piece of crap, and I think it was like a dozen parts at most. This is a lot more detailed, and hopefully it's accurate as well. Wait a minute, that's more decals. Oh, you know what? I wonder if one's stickers. I have no idea. I think this is stickers. So you get an option. But where was I? So it should be a lot more detailed. All the Star Wars kits that Bandai is doing, since Bandai makes all those Gundam kits, at least for the action figures that I've seen, or the figure model kits, they're all like action pose, so you can put them in different configurations and position all the legs and arms. I'm assuming you get the same thing here going by the box art, so you should have a lot of variety for positioning. This guy only has 2 legs, you're not going to get much. But nice looking instructions. And one giant sheet, which makes it so easy to show on camera. Yep, there they are. Is that the rubber grommets? That is traditional Bandai grommets there for putting in movable parts. And you do get a base. All the bases they come with on these kits are similar. You're supposed to lock them all together. It doesn't really matter too much for this kit, but all the spaceships have a Death Star base that go together, and each one's different, which is a nice touch. So, all right. What do you say we get building here? Just a quick update. It's only been about a half hour, and things are going wonderful here. The detail of this is incredible. The build has been going smoothly with no problems. Virtually no seam lines. So far all the seam lines get covered up by other parts, so I haven't got to any exterior areas that need a lot of sanding and filling, but it's a very, very crisp cast on this AT-ST. There's that. One thing I want to point out in the instructions, make sure when you're clipping things off, I can find an example here real quick. Hope I didn't clip them all off already. I think I already clipped them off. Okay, we'll use this as an example. Some of the pieces, at least on the first sprue, when you first start out, the tab where you have to put things together, that's where the sprue connects. So when you're clipping things off the sprue, be very careful that you don't clip off everything, because you want to save that tab to connect the pieces together. Again, apparently that was only on the first instruction, which makes it a good beginner's trap. This is as an example here, but this is an extreme one where it's more obvious. The parts separate by the first instructions, or was more disguised ones. So just be careful when you're clipping that off. Other thing I thought was really cool was cleaning off this piece a little bit. I noticed this was, standard styrene here, and this is not. This is PVC. And this sprue here, this is cool. There's actually 2 different materials they used in this sprue. One is standard styrene here, and then another portion here is PVC. So That is a little cool feature that I thought was interesting. 2 different materials on one sprue. So that means the pieces that are very delicate here, all these little wirings and stuff, PVC, so they won't break. Just thought that was a nice touch and interesting. I have one leg done, everything going fairly smoothly right now. Surprisingly, there is not a whole lot of articulation just yet. All these areas here, and I believe this one, no, not that one, well, these two have tabs, so they cannot move, unfortunately. However, you can just cut the tabs if you do want to be able to move this with some slight action. This one has some slight pull to it if you don't put on the back there, for example. But most of the articulation is going to come from where it attaches to the body. So you got this thing that goes up and down pretty well, and even, you know, they'll go out that way. So they'll still give you a lot. And the foot area here gives you some. But the kit doesn't tell you where to glue and not to glue, so just keep that in mind. Don't glue that. Definitely don't glue that. The other ones are optional. And there's only one portion of the kit that I've had problems getting on, and that's the foot right here. It's extremely tight fit. What I would recommend is these little tabs here. Clip them off. Don't put any of the little bits onto the foot to begin with, because you need to get this on here, and it just doesn't close down that easy. So we're gonna have to apply some glue. Just do a little bit. There's like 6 tabs just to put this little thing on in place. It's a little ridiculous. And it's rubbing up right against this spot here. So we'll put a little bit more on when it's in place on the bottom. But you gotta force it a little bit. There we go. See? Now it's on. So it's gotta go underneath this little ridge here, and it's extremely tight fit. So now we can glue the bottom, get a good seal, and then add all the accessories on top. Even though it's only been one evening, we already have to take a break from building the kit. I had to stop at the top of the legs because I have to take care of the interior. Yes, there is an interior to this kit, and it is quite a beautiful interior as well. Fully detailed, looks wonderful, even comes with pilots. But oh my god, what happened to your hands? It's all that cloning. You make a copy from a copy and it degrades, and look, they just have lumps. Lumps for hands. What happened? That's terrible. Beautiful kit, and they blew it on the figures. Yeah, no hands, no really detail there, you know, to speak of whatsoever, and of course, you know, big holes in their backs. They made one-piece figures, which is a huge disappointment. A lot more detail could have been added if they at least left the arms as separate pieces. And then it's the exact same figure twice as well. So this needs to be fixed because I want to show off the interior as much as possible. But I got to figure out some parts here to replace this with. I'm hoping I have something around that would fit. This is 1/48 scale, which is larger than standard 28mm miniatures. However, I was playing around, especially with some GW ones. This is actually smaller, at least when it comes to arms and hands and stuff like that. Smaller than like 40K figures. So I was playing around with some Eldar hands, and they were a lot bigger than this guy's hands, and he's, you know, a lot taller than an elf. So we're gonna put this off to the side right now and see if I can get this interior apart. I just stuck it together to show on camera, and I'm gonna break it when I try to get it apart. Wait, let me try something. This usually works. Damn, didn't work. It always falls apart when I drop it normally. Okay, well, we're gonna paint the interior. There we go. There you go, you little bugger. I already primed it with gray. I wanted to do a really light gray, but actually I found some stills from Return of the Jedi, and it is a much darker gray. But we're going to detail this up, so I have to take a break from all the building and get this painted, and then I could seal it up and finish up with the rest of the build portion. Come on, Bert. Alright, we are finally back to the Bandai AT-ST. I want to try to get this done, hopefully, within a week or two, so I can get it off the table. Where did we leave off so many months ago? I know I was working on the cockpit here, and going by the resources for the colors that I found, it's kind of difficult. I couldn't find any. There's no interiors of the model, of course. All you have is the set, and the only stills I found were some pictures from some really old magazines, and of course from the third movie. Still images from the movie tend to be a little iffy to use as reference because of lighting and other conditions, and also magazines, especially back, in their 80s, the color comes off. But I'm kind of going with my own color. I wanted to go with something a bit lighter in case I want to display the interior. All this is done over the Vallejo gray primer, and I'm just painting over that, leaving some of it exposed. But all of this is just various shades of gray that I'm using. Mainly it's Vallejo game color cold gray and model color light gray. I'm just trying to add colors as best as I can, representing from the few still shots that I have. And going fairly well. Again, I'm going a little bit lighter than I should. The accuracy is pretty good on the front and the back panels from what I can tell. The sides are a little iffy because they're not shown very well in any of the screen caps that I found. So I think they kind of just did their best in some of the locations. Obviously adding all the little light colored panels. I need to finish up the seats here. And the sides, I know there's kind of a greenish texture to them. I decided to go with, what is this? German Field Gray, which is, I need to finish up the seats and some of the side panels. When you are painting flat surfaces like this, thin paint and several coats. Whenever people are always having problems, how do you paint things like this without being streaky? Well, it is streaky. That's why you do multiple coats. So it's not all going to cover here at once. But about 3 or 4 coats will get a nice smooth layer. While the rest of the cockpit is drying, we'll go ahead and finish off the pilots. If you remember, the arms were pretty bad on the pilots because they're all one piece and both the pilots look exactly the same, and so I wanted to replace them. This is a 1/48 scale kit, however the pilots are a little bit smaller than that. I managed to scrape up some Tamiya arms from, I forget what it was, from some tanker series or not, or something like that, and it's either a little bit longer than they should be, but they're not horribly too long. So just went ahead and positioned this way. I also clipped off the head and went flying 20 feet away into the carpet, but I managed to find it and put it back on so it's slightly turned, so they still look a little bit different. And luckily the arms kind of positioned themselves so they would be holding some of the control rods in the cockpit. And now I just have to paint them up. They're also gray, just like the interior of the AT-ST. I'm going with Vallejo model color light gray because their costumes seem fairly light in color. And so they don't blend completely into the cockpits. I'm going to highlight them with a little bit of white, and then also when we go to wash them, I'll be using a slightly different color wash, so they will stand out. For the shade for the guys, I want to do that separately from the cockpit because I'm going to use different colors. I don't want to use black on these guys. So, well, I want to use black, but I want to use a very, very thin black. So black ink, but I mixed in a huge amount of Vallejo glaze, glaze medium, that's what it's called, to make it very, very light. Use that rather than the water because you don't want to over thin inks, because then you have problems with them drying and leaving tide marks. And also the glaze tends to have them stick a little better in the recesses. Super thin ink is more like a ink glaze, and just goes on very thin. It doesn't really stick that well, at least not in the recesses. So easy peasy little shading here. That's about it. And now that's done, I can do the faces, and then we'll call these guys done and we can move on to finishing the cockpit. Gonna give the cockpit a wash now, and mixed up two colors, AK colors. We've got enamel wash brown blue, which actually I find a little green, and AK landing gear wash, which is a black wash. They do make blue, you know what, actually, I'm gonna thin this a bit. It's a little thick. They do make blue enamel washes, AK or MIG or one of those companies do. But I don't have any on me at the moment, so that's why I'm making my own. Now some people commented saying that enamel eats Bandai plastic, which I don't understand why. And being one that I need to try it to see if it actually does happen, though I cannot imagine why that would happen. I did coat this with enamel, an acrylic gloss to protect the paint and make it easier to come off. So I don't think that, hoping it's not going to be an issue. We're going to find out though, if this thing melts away in a couple days. Alright, nothing's melted yet. So cleaning off the somewhat dried enamel. It's not completely dry yet, I'm kind of speeding through this. So it's taking a bit more rubbing than it would if I waited for it to fully dry. But there we go, we got all our little recessed areas there are filled in now, so we have some depth. And we're looking good. Let this thing dry and put it all together. Actually, I'll give it a... You know what, I'm going to have to let it dry overnight, actually, and I think I'm going to flat varnish everything first before putting it together so I get all the nooks and crannies. And we have our finished cockpit here. Only one issue, the one arm on the guy on the right, his right arm, was sticking out a bit too far, so he's actually leaning in a bit. Good thing I didn't glue the pilots in place, I just wedged him in there. But it's okay, he's leaning over for a button or something like that. One thing I was concerned about is how much is going to be exposed, because I was thinking about leaving this so the top can be pulled off. You know, that's more that has to be painted here, so like these areas here, I'm not sure if I'm going to leave this off or not. I'm going to leave the hatch open so you can kind of see in there. It's not a whole lot to see in there, really. But, you know, you can get the back panel and you can see the guys through there because light will be coming in from the top. But anyway, that's done. And the rest of this is going to be going together pretty quick. I've already been putting all the extra little bits together. Again, Bandai, super easy to put together. Almost don't need glue. Only thing I had a problem getting together was this little missile laser thing, whatever. There's a piece on the back that has to go on, and unfortunately it doesn't fit well because you have to match it up to 3 pieces and then push it on, and because of the delicate pieces here, it's about 98% in place, and I can't put it any more in place because I can't put any more force on it because of the small pieces, so that's a disappointment. But yeah, now with this together, I just have to put everything else together, and we can paint the outside and get this done. Yay! Alright, we're finished! The build portion is finished. Yay! Just want to show you real quick finished version here, so on the next part we can just go straight into painting. It is a wonky thing, just because of so many moving parts. Just trying to get it to stand on its own is a little bit difficult. I am going to fuse the movable parts together once I decide on a position. I was planning... Yeah, you know what? I was planning on waiting until after it was painted to find a position for it. I think I'm actually going to get in there with some plastic cement and fuse it into position now before painting, because it's just going to get annoying with parts falling off and all sorts of things going on. Because the legs are starting to spread actually as you move them. See? Yeah, there's too much stuff here. I'm going to fuse everything together before we get to the paint job. I do have to figure out, I may have to, I'm not sure if this needs to be masked off, so either I'm going to fill this with cotton or something like that and then temporarily put this on, because I'm not sure if I can put it on then put something inside and still get it out. So have to work out, see if I can put this down and be able to pry it back off without damaging the paint. But there we go, we are on our way to finishing our AT-ST. We are beginning with the painting, and I've already primed it with some all-clad black. Hang on, lamp doesn't want to cooperate. There we go. I primed it with all-clad black. All-clad because it's very durable, so if I do weathering, it's not going to peel off like Vallejo is prone to do. And actually, I kind of contemplated whether to go with black or a light gray for the primer. Ended up going with black just because there's lots of little nooks and crannies that I don't have to worry about getting too light of a color in there later on. But I don't know. I'm still not sure. Gray might have worked too. But I'm going to go ahead and begin the painting. And we're starting off with Tamiya neutral gray. And color, a lot of people painted a cold gray, the AT-STs, although I think they're more of a light gray in the movie. I don't know exactly where I'm going to end up now. I'm kind of just blue skying what the final color will be, because cool gray kind of sounds neat, but I know it's not that accurate. But we will see. I gotta turn the fan on because I'm about to suffocate here. For the second color, we're going with the neutral gray again. Just added some white to it. And not going overboard on the highlights. Gonna concentrate mainly on the weathering to do all the work on this thing. But mainly just applying the highlights in a halo fashion from the top down, although some of the larger panels I need a bit more highlight on. Easy peasy so far. We have reached a critical moment in the build here. Painted it like you've already seen. Off camera, I gave it 2 dull coats, let it dry a couple days, and then I gave it 2 gloss coats and let it dry a couple days. Now, here's where I have to get long-winded for a bit and explain things to you. I had a plan, what I wanted to do. I'm sure no one remembers, but way back when I did the Millennium Falcon, I had a little problem with it. I think it was the pigments or the wash was too dark or something else, but after painting it and weathering it, I went over it with a... I had to go over back with the base color again and just very lightly highlight some of the center of the panels, and it turned out actually amazing because there was a slight transition from the weathered panels to the cleaner paint, and it really made that model pop, and it was completely unintentional. My initial plan was to do the same thing with this. The problem I realized at this point was that to do that I need a lot of large surface areas, which for the head here, totally fine, I can do that. Can't do that on the legs, because trying to get into these little tiny areas with an airbrush, I'm going to get into the recesses too, so don't mind me, I'm just dropping the model. So, can't do that. The other issue we have here is, I mentioned before about the stories I hear about enamels eating the plastic on the Bandai kits. Now, I gather from the information that I found that mainly it's the softer plastic is the issue, like the little back legs back here. And that makes sense to me, because the other part didn't make sense why Bandai plastic would specifically get totally eaten and melted by enamel paint. Soft plastic, that has issues with enamels. But the thing is, I'm a person who actually needs to do it for myself to find out if it's completely true or not. So we're going to cover this with an enamel wash. Brown, blue for Panzer gray vehicles, AK interactive. I can't see the little... Yeah, okay. I can't see the screen from where I'm positioned here, so hopefully this is all on camera. We're going to use that. Now, a couple precautions already done. Like I said, I put in 2 flat varnishes on. That was when I was going to do that previous thing I just mentioned with the Falcon. Now I did 2 gloss varnishes in preparation for this. Also, I'm applying it through the airbrush, which aerates the enamel wash a bit, so it's not going to be soaking into the model as much. So combination with that, plus the gloss coat that's been hardening for a few days, hopefully we will not end up with a melted model. Well, nothing's melted yet. Because we put on with airbrush, we don't have to wait for the wash to dry that long, so it's only been a couple minutes. It does seem to be sticking a little bit more than what I'm used to. So I may have to use a little bit of thinner to get it off. But yeah, now we just got the long process wiping down. And I hope this works, because, again, the reason why I want to do it is because I had to see for myself, and also I don't want to eliminate... Oops. No, I just popped off the pen, don't worry. I don't want to eliminate this avenue of weathering down the line, because I am going to be doing more of these kits at some point, I'm sure. So, we're going to take all this off and then wait a few days and see if we get to another part of this video, or if it goes in the trash. Won't that be fun waiting? Alright, we're going to try this again. The AT-ST melted from the enamels, so I had to get another one. And we're going to start this from scratch, so... Nah, I'm just kidding, it's empty. It's fine, nothing happened to it. I didn't think anything would happen to it, especially with the coating, protective gloss coating and airbrushing on the enamels, so yeah, there's no cracking. It's not an issue. It might be an issue if you put it on raw plastic very thickly with a brush and let it sit for a long time. I can imagine that, but yeah, we're totally not fine here. The wiping off the wash was a little bit difficult. If you go back to the last video, and actually I didn't notice it until I was editing that and putting it together, when I was wiping off the wash, I heard a lot of real rough, actually you can still hear it. It was like, you know, it's like sandpaper trying to get it off. The wash didn't come off too well. I'm chalking that up to mainly, to me, it's not the smoothest paint in the world, and also I put the dull coat on before putting on the gloss coat, so very rough surface, very difficult to get the wash off, but again, that was because of the paints and the varnish, not the plastic, so that's not an issue either. It actually kind of worked out okay, because some of the areas where I didn't put enough gloss coat on, like underneath, couldn't get the wash off, but that was just the areas where, as I was spraying it, I forgot to put an extra few coats on, so it worked out. So I got nice shade on the bottom, and I got a decent color modulation, unintentional effect here, so some of the parts where I had to scrub a bit harder and I couldn't get into the recesses gave a good variation on it. So yeah, we are looking good. This is an AT-ST. It's just gray. We're pretty much done with the paint job here. I am going to add a few extra little details. I'm not going to heavily weather it. I'm still not sure if I'm going to do any battle damage. I want to do a bit more weathering on the top. We'll do some more streaking down the sides. We already have a little bit of light streaking because as I'm pulling out the wash, you want to wipe from up to down. But I'm at it a little bit more using some AK Interactive dark streaking grime. And just adding a few little streaks here and there. Gotta make sure, I gotta remember to get sure I make it from top to bottom. Really I can figure out, because this thing is at such weird angles. I have to try to figure out, remember which is the top. I don't want to apply it that way. So this is really rough here, but we're gonna clean it up. After we let the grime dry just a couple minutes, and we just kind of rub it away. Want to rub away like 90% of it. It's just we want a subtle transition effect. I should have probably actually gave this thing another dull gloss coat before doing this, because same issue I had with the other wash. It is not coming off as well as I would like, but kind of gives just a slight streaking effect. That's all we want left, and also concentrating in some of the little areas like this that may catch rain and dirt, so it streaks down nicely. But I'm going to do this, and then I'm going to repeat the process with some dust effects, so then we have some lighter streaking on it. And by that time, I'll decide if I want to add any battle damage. I had to think about it for a while, but I did decide to do some battle damage. And again, this is something that's hard to do while talking. Realized, made a bit of a mistake. Chips like this should have been done before doing the overall wash. Yeah, bugger. Because you want them to blend in and get softened by the wash. Because I forgot to do that, I'm just going for a subtle chip look, so I'm not going to do some like big deep cracks. But what I have here, it's a mix. It's German gray, Vallejo German gray, and I've hang on, got a little cotton on my brush. I've mixed in with flat brown and a little bit of orange brown to soften the color. So I'm just doing dark scratches and trying to put them in reasonable areas, so just along the edges. I'm doing quite a lot of them, but they are really small. And we got here just a number 1 brush, because if I use anything smaller, it's going to dry too fast. And just using the tip of the brush, and I'm almost kind of like trying to shake my hand slightly, so I just kind of going down the side where I want to put them, and go in different directions with the brush, so the scratches go in different directions. You don't want blobs, you want little fine lines. Brush is drying out, and you want the paint fairly dry, not quite dry brush, but you definitely don't want a whole bunch of moisture on the brush. So, not going to do deep scratches. I don't want to put shadows under them because I think that's going to be too stark, since I already did the wash. Like I said, I should have done this before that. We'll see. I may do a little bit of underlining or adding a bit more depth to some of the larger ones, or ones that I screw up on and make too big. But I still need to do more of the streaking grime, which I stopped after I remembered when I was supposed to do all these scratches. So I'm going to do streaking grime, and then I'll do some streaks from some of these little dirt chips. But I'm going to stop talking. Gotta finish this. Now I've done a bit of weathering going in the dark direction. Now I'm going in the lights. Did some streaking grime on the chips and a few other recesses. I'm probably still going to do some more of that, add a bit more dirt. Right now I'm going with dust effects. This is going from the top, just like with the other streaks, just to add more variation and color to the system. One thing I forgot to keep in mind, this thing goes up and down like this, and so the direction of all this is important. You don't want streaks obviously going diagonal. So some of this I had to clean up with thinner and redo a few of the streaks. But see, it's all fading now. I don't want to leave too much showing. It's just, you know, a very subtle variation. Make it more realistic. So that's about right. A little bit more and we'll be about done here. So yeah, a bit more dirt in some of the crevices with probably track. I think I used some of the track wash. That'd be a good color. And then we can seal this thing and get to the last step. We're at the final enamel wash step. And what I've done basically in some of the recesses where I wanted a bit more dirt, and also just on some of the panels, just once again to get a bit more variation, I put some of the streaking grime. I decided not to use the dark brown. I didn't like the color. I'm just using more of the number 12 streaking grime. And something important I want to mention. When you're doing a kit like this, especially when you're just starting out, you reach a point where it looks good. Actually, especially when you watch real experts, you know, better than me do videos, they'll do something and it's like, wow, that looks great. You know, that kit's finished, and they're only a quarter of the way done. They still have a lot more weathering effects to do. Lots of times you have to really just know when to stop. Because it's really easy. It's like, oh, this is really great, but you know, according to these instructions, I'm supposed to do a bunch more weathering and this and that and a dozen different washes. If you're happy with it, stop, because you do run the risk of screwing it up. I probably should have stopped before I did this, because I think I'm turning it a bit too brown now in a few areas. But you know, just because I'm doing how many washes and enamel layers I'm doing now, I forgot, lost track. Just because I'm doing all these doesn't mean it's required. If you're happy just doing that, you know, one or two, you know, that is, you know, if that's enough for you, that's enough. Just don't think because I'm doing so many, you know, you have to take it this far as well. But anyway, so you can see, like, unlike the streaks I'm doing here, these I'm kind of more doing a little bit up and down, but just kind of blotching them too. Again, just get some variation, but we're going to call it quits after I get this. Some of the ones I put in the recesses, I'll have to get in there with a brush with odorless thinner to clean some of that out. But we're going to do dull coat this a bit. I do think it needs a slight dull coat. It is just a tad too shiny. Sometimes you can leave it after the enamel washes because it gives it a somewhat realistic sheen. But I think we're good to go, and we're going to start getting the base ready after this. Okay, we're done. At least with the AT-ST part. Still have to do the base. Figured I'll show you the final model here, just because I realized the base is going to take a lot longer than I was expecting. Pretty much, you saw everything on camera that I did. I did dull coat it, however, rather than using like tester's dull coat or actual flat varnish on it, instead went back to an old trick, which was using, you take Tamiya thinner or a denatured alcohol, as I use, and you put a drop, just a drop of Tamiya buff into it. And I mean literally one drop to a full big cup, and you do a very light coat over it. It's a technique usually used for armor. It kind of blends everything together, gives it a slight misting coat over it. It look like dust or whatnot, but it takes out the sheen. It doesn't give you the protection of a tester's dull coat would, but this is not meant to be handled, so I don't need protection. but it doesn't dull it so much that it looks dead flat. It still has a slight sheen to it, which works out pretty well. I was going to add a few like oil stains here and there, but I'm not really sure where to add them. And plus, who knows if oil is in space. Because things with like legs here, where do you put dripping oil when a leg moves in so many directions? So I'm going to skip that, but this part is done at least. So there you go. Hopefully wrapping up this project in, yeah, one more part in this video and we'll be all done. While the model is drying, I'm going to go ahead and start on the base. Doing a rare thing, I'm actually going to do a little diorama base, which I normally don't like doing, but, you know, I have some stuff lying around that I've been wanting to do a forest thing with for quite a while, so we're doing it. As usual, picture frames make really good bases. I decided I want something a little bit taller for, I don't know why, but I went looking for something more cube-shaped, and not a huge selection. I know I've seen cube or thick-walled frames before, but all I could find was this. Now, it's just a couple bucks. It's plastic, which is really good, so smooth sides, no wood grain to have to deal with. One issue is, this is not a cube, it is slightly slanted. So, normal way of doing this would be to pop out the plastic here, or just drill right into the plastic, and this will be the top. But if I do that, the base is going to be going up this way, which, you know, might not be noticeable, but it'll be noticeable to me. So I need to do it this way, so it slopes down a bit more, you know, kind of flows with the model a bit better shooting up. Poses a problem because this thing's all plastic here. It's all like one piece. So I gotta lift this up, especially difficult since it's not completely flush here. So I need to put a piece of, oh, this is glass. I assumed it was gonna be plastic. Yeah, you can totally see the size difference just by lining this up from the top to the bottom. But I need to put a piece of plastic on here that I can build the base up on. So I'm gonna have to raise it and then have a smooth surface that I can glue onto. So we're just going to take some scraps I have lying around here, either plastic or some cork, to build this up to give a support, which I could then put a thin piece of styrene over this and then eventually build up the base. So give me something to do while the enamels are drying. Doing the base now, and it's already not starting well. This black plastic frame that I got, my sick habit of trying to make things perfect, had to paint it, and because I wanted to gloss coat it, and then I found there was a few little indents in the plastic, so I had to sand and fill, and then the lacquer ran, and blah 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 blah. A lot of crap happened. Should have just left it bare plastic. Would have made a lot more sense. So it's been like 5 days just making a black plastic box into a black plastic box. But I already showed you, I believe, how I filled it in. And we got the AT-ST. By the way, I'm going to be bitching a lot because this is the reason why I don't like doing large diorama bases, because I'm going to spend more time doing this than it took me to do this. And so I hope you're enjoying this, because that means you're getting less videos on a whole new subject, which is right over here that I'm not going to show you. But I'm going to show you what the plan is. I can't stop at every step because this is kind of like a quick process of laying everything down and fiddling, getting everything right. But we're going to start off by building up the base a little bit with some spackle. And then I got a whole variety of bits I'm going to be adding to it. These are roots off of some sort of bush. Found them growing on the side of the road, along the sidewalk. Strange looks when you're pulling plants apart as people are walking by, but very useful. These are going to make really good trees. I got some fallen litter. This is probably herbs of some sort. I wonder if I can smell it. It has no smell. It could be ground up leaves as well, because some forest litter is that. I got other type of forest litter. This is more leafy shaped. I know the tree that this comes off of, but I can't remember the name of these little things, so that's gonna come in handy. I got, oh my god, I even got more. I got so much of this stuff I never even use it. This is the same thing, but it's more green. Rocks, we're gonna be using lots of different rocks, and this mossy stuff again. Someone will tell me the name of it online. But this will make some good fern material. So that, and yeah, so that's the plan. I'm gonna start by building up the base a bit, and I need a big spatula, which I don't have on me right now. I need to get a spatula. After a half hour of fiddling, we have this. Ooh, exciting, isn't it? So basically just a matter of putting down the spackle and then positioning the pieces however I wanted them. Try to make things lopsided. You don't want things to be even, so you don't want to do like tree and tree or tree, rock and rock. Have like a little bit more on one side than the other. It makes it look a bit more natural. But just spread the spackle out and put some rocks here and there and patted them all down where everything is still wet. Did the same thing with the trees. The center tree is going to need more support, so that's kind of a little wobbly right now. I'm going to pin that eventually, and also I used more of those little roots I had to make some outcroppings. We'll build this up with some putty once it all dries, but this is a good start for the moment. Now I gotta let everything dry and continue working on it tomorrow. We have our base is primed, ready to go here. I primed it lightly with white, and then I went in with black, just to some of the recessed areas that I want darker. I haven't painted a big base, big outdoor base like this in a long time, so I don't remember how I did it last time, if I did it ever. So this is kind of experiment. I should have added a little bit of color to the spackle, because if I scratch anything while I'm working on this, the white's going to show through, which is going to be really annoying. But I'm going to try to document this best I can, but this is kind of just experimenting with colors here, since I really don't know what I'm doing. Right now I have Vallejo burnt umber with its small amounts of game color earth in here, and just trying to give an overall color. This is a little lighter than what I was initially thinking, but I'm going to put a wash over this eventually, which is going to darken it up. But I need to get something down, and I can figure out if it's the right color or not. Yeah, that previous color was a little bit light. I'm going to go back and reinforce the dark areas. I've added in some camo black brown to that previous mix. I'm just going to hit the recessed areas and then the darker areas. Brush is clogged. Bugger. Brush is clogged, so I have to stop and fix that. But I'm going to hit the recessed areas and then the areas around the roots of the trees. I figured that would be moister, so that's going to be a darker color. Work, damn you! Damn it. Got the groundwork on the base mostly done. Wanted to do some stippling of some lighter colors, however, because of the sand I didn't glue it down, that's the issue. And also because of the very weak spackle, especially with the paint. It was coming back up and leaving white spots, so I couldn't try to do a light dry brush, but still had to go back and add some darker color to fill in the white spots, which actually isn't bad because it's giving me a little bit more variation. Doing the trees now, and doing his deadwood, so for deadwood you want to go grays. Earth, a little bit light gray, and I think beige, or buff. I think it's buff I put in. And doing the inside now, which is beige and light gray. The inside of the tree, the non-barky areas. When you're picking up like natural terrain, like little twigs or something like this, especially with rocks, a lot of people, well, I shouldn't say a lot, but some people like the look of the natural rock, so they don't paint it and then put it on the miniature or the model. you always, anything that goes on a model, you like always need to paint it. Natural stuff, even though it looks cool, it looks so out of place next to a painted model. I see so many people who, when they finish, so let me zoom out the camera a little. When they finish a miniature, then they glue gravel to the base and they leave it the natural color. That looks very bad because it just looks weird. You're putting a painted thing next to an unpainted thing. So even though the twig I'm using here is obviously wood, it just looks out of place next to the AT-ST, which is painted. So that's what we're doing here. Just light touches, and we'll give it a wash eventually to bring it all together, because of all the texture, there's a limit of what I can do with the brush. It's very delicate. Nature means a hell of a lot of colors. I always say it, but like rocks, they're not one color, they're speckled, they have different colors all throughout, and of course dirt does as well, all the little bits. Rocks and twigs and little thingies. The point is, adding a little green, because I want a wet, damp forest, thick cover forest base, so going over it with Vallejo Game Color black-green ink, very, very thin, and concentrating more in the recessed areas where you would get a little algae growing. Also just a little speckle here and there, stippling it on, just to add a bit more color to the base. Kind of like with the weathering on the AT-ST, I gotta make sure I don't overdo this. Especially on this, because it's soaking into the spackle right now. I don't want to soften up because it's going to start peeling off, so I have to be careful and not go over the same area too many times. If it needs more color, I'll just wait till it dries and go over it again. That's the process right now. I'm just picking up different colors and trying to darken a few areas and lighten a few areas. So I'll grab some sepia and I'll put that on here and there. You can do this through dry brushing, but as I said, spackle's very delicate, so I'm choosing washes instead, because that's not bringing, at the moment, that's not bringing any of the colors up. There. Adding all my little moss ferns now, and using them kind of disguise the areas that I screwed up. I had to shorten quite a bit, and just a little bit of super glue, tweezers. Luckily they stick right away. The other way you can possibly do it is to, especially if you want to do a bunch, drill a little hole and then use the stem and stick them in the hole till it's full. I'm not trying to do big bushes though, I'm just trying to do something else. Sort of alien looking plants, like y'all. Just gonna add a few more. I got these, I think they're all a little bit too big. So I want to add some smaller ones for some variation. Just trim them off. Tweezers. Super glue. Put them right there. Oops. There we go. Oh, that one's a little off. Exciting stuff. Next thing to do is add some grass turfs. These are Army Painter grass turfs. I'm glad they recently improved these because the old ones kind of sucked. I got a lot that are lying down, which makes them pretty useless. And normally for miniatures, these like giant ones like this are kind of useless, and pulling them apart doesn't always look good. But here they're okay. But I'm trying to use them mainly concentrating them, grass growing from one direction. Also using them around the edges to take care of any of the little spots that don't look that good. Where I see some fingerprints or where the initial spackle wasn't that great. But this looks a lot better than using like just plain old static grass. Because little patches of grass a lot more realistic than doing a manicured lawn all the way across. The base is also turning out a bit more swampy than I was expecting. It's okay, but the ferns, as soon as I put those down with the dark colors, it's coming out a bit more swampish, which I may have to adjust my terrain vegetation, my terrain grassy things and growing things to accommodate that, but we'll see. I had to add the AT-ST to in order to do this first, because I didn't want to start putting a lot of debris down and end up having them on the debris, so that's why it's a little difficult to see things at the moment. Forest litter, I'm going with my crushed leaves or basil, whatever it is. Stippling on thinned white glue. I'll get in there. And I was only going to do just a little bit of this, but I think actually I'm going to do a lot more. But I want to stipple it on, and then I have to blow it off, and then I'm going to have to add more, because I don't want a even coat of it. Well, initially, I was going to have just a little bit, that's why I was stippling it on, but now I think I'm going to have more of it. I'm going to have to go back and do it in a couple passes. Oops. So, make a mess here. A lot is getting caught in the grass tufts, so I'll have to blow this off. And yeah, we're going to do one more pass, I think, on it. And then go to the next little bit of terrain. I'm at the point in the build where everything usually goes wrong, because there's always that point at the very end where I screw something up. Usually it's putting a thumbprint somewhere on the model, but I was inventive this time. Two things. Two screw-ups. I want to do a little bit of water, that's why I kept the recess down here, and I've used my acrylic gloss before, Pledge with Future Shine, for water effects before, and it worked fine. Didn't work fine this time. The first coat was okay, but mostly got soaked into the plaster, and then when I did a second coat, part of it started fogging up, and I managed to scrape it off, but I ended up taking off some of the plaster and the paint as well. So I got a bit of a mess. Now, I have to be careful touching this right now, because the other big screw up is masking. You see that kind of is hard to hold right now because it's still a little wet. This little U-shaped thing here, I had the base all masked up while I was working on everything, peeled it off, and paint was coming up in just huge chunks. Yeah, I don't use spray enamels that much, and after all the sanding and all that, I guess I pulled off the primer layer, but yeah, and I can't go back and spray the base to get a nice even coat now with everything attached. There's just no way to mask all this off and not get it on the grass. So, sanded it down, filled in the gaps as best I could, which obviously wasn't that great, and now I have to brush paint all this, which is looking quite awful. I have one idea to fix this, try to save it, but otherwise it's just, I have to leave it as is, unfortunately. It doesn't stand out too well because it's black and I'm going to matte it, so it's not going to be too obvious, but it is annoying. But anyway, the thing I can hopefully fix is the water here, and we're going to try some actual water products. You can use clear resin for it, which I'm not. Where's my bottle? There it is. I'm gonna try some Vallejo still water instead. I never actually used fake water before. I just used the Pledge stuff. So works a little bit similar. It's a bit more viscous, so it's less likely to spread. The Future did leak up the little log in the ground here and soak into some of the plants, so I had to remove them. Easy enough to fix, and it was okay because it's, it's like some of the water surrounding the log. That's fine, but still water. I got this, and I've mixed in a little bit of ink to it. Very little, because I still want it transparent. But especially since with this goof up here, I need a little bit of color in here to cover that up. So this is like 3 drops of green and 2 drops of sepia. And we're going to carefully apply this with a pipette. Try to get this all on camera. And this has to be done in thin layers. If you do it too thick, here it does have a tendency to shrink. So we'll just do a little bit at a time, and this is going to take days, because this takes like a day or 2 to dry depending on the thickness. And if you want it thicker, you have to wait till it fully dries and then do some more. Since I already have the gloss coat here from the future, I'm hoping that will act like a good barrier, prevent shrinkage, because no one likes shrinkage. But that's about it. I mixed up way more than I needed here. Better that than having way less. I gotta be careful with the pipette. I don't want bubbles. But that's about it. Now it's just a waiting game. And hopefully nothing goes horribly wrong here. With my luck, I expect something to go horribly wrong.
And with that, we are done with Bandai's AT-ST. The water effect on the bottom that we finished off with, unfortunately the Vallejo still water, not that great. I was aware that it was going to shrink. However, I was thinking it was going to shrink horizontally from the sides. I did not expect it to shrink vertically because the area underneath the water was rough. The water came out rough as well because it shrunk downwards as well. Even after 3 coats, it's still a little bit rough. So the pledge, which didn't work out that great, on this particular project actually works better than the supposedly realistic Vallejo water. Unfortunately, it fogged up, so had to redo that. But other than that, it came out pretty good, except for the sides of the base, which not much I can do about. I hit it pretty well because I put dull coat over it, but after several layers of just brushing black paint, I did the best I could. But overall, project came out pretty well. I like all the weathering in the interior of the base, even though I don't do bases that often. I think it came out fairly decent. So we're going to put this one in the storage bin, and it's all done and complete. And if you're looking to build models yourself, this is a really good practice or start model. I think it's very cheap. It only cost me $20 or so. It's very easy build, very easy to paint. It's just gray. But it leaves so many options for you to improve it. If you want to add weathering in the interior and a base and all the other stuff I did, you can do that. Or like I said, you can just paint it gray and call it quits. So it gives you options, and it's not that expensive. So hope you enjoyed this. There's going to be a lot more Star Wars Bandai kits coming up sometime in the future. Don't know exactly when, but at least this one's done and I can move on to something else. So with that, hope you enjoyed everything, and thanks for watching. Bye-bye.